Hey there, YouTube. I'm Ikitsu. This is the Ikitsu Times. Welcome to my channel, and welcome to a little bit of Sins of Solar Empire 2. So today we're going to be talking about the Domina Subjugator, which is the other support ship for the Advent faction, a faction that seems to have quite a few supporty type ships there. This one is one that I've actually been using a lot more lately, and I've sort of gotten better at using it. One of the things that stopped me from using it before is they're a little bit tricky to actually get right, and they still kind of are for me. There's definitely people that are going to be way more on top of properly using them, but I think that I've kind of gotten the hang of them a little bit there. So anyway, let's take a look at the stats here.
The future is ours.
So for the Domina Subjugator, you're looking at a durability of 200, 1,750 shield points, 1,600 hull points, and 350 antimatter. For hidden statistics, we're looking at 750 maximum speed with no armor strength, as you've got no armor. So this has got no weapons like most support ships in this game, and it's a very peculiar type of ship there. It's a much more sort of the offense type of thing, but it's still actually kind of the same as the Iconist Guardian, in that it's sort of all about making it so your opponent can't do damage to you, rather than actually destroying anything. So the ability that starts off with, and the ability that sort of lends its name, is Suppression, which is a very powerful ability. It has a cooldown of 15 seconds, a range of 8,000, antimatter cost of 200, and a duration of 90 seconds. I will comment just here, just as a tangent. I know that this game uses like crappy AI art for like a few different things there. The actual like main assets of the game are, as far as I know, mostly not. But the icons and the user interface are, and it is really obvious for Suppression. It looked garbage. Anyway, that being said, though, this ability is one where for 90 seconds the target of it is completely like incapable of moving, it's incapable of attacking, it's incapable of using its abilities. This doesn't work on capital ships, structures, command ships, or titans, so it's only against corvettes, frigates, and cruisers. But that's still a pretty sizable number of different targets that you're doing there. Now, with a cost of 200 antimatter per cast, if you've got this like a little bit leveled up in terms of the text that you've researched, you can cast 2 of these before you run out. So this is the ship that needs to have acolytes. It's impossible to keep up with the cost of suppression without having a bunch of those assisting in your antimatter regeneration sort of endeavors there. So you actually do need quite a few of those to keep casting suppression. And the ratio that I've been sort of finding is that if you've got about 4 acolytes for every one of your dominas, and you've got like a whole bunch of other stuff set up to sort of supply those acolytes with a lot of antimatter very quickly, then you can get your Domina Subjugators to cast suppression off cooldown pretty much indefinitely or close to indefinitely with 4 acolytes. That's how many you sort of need there. Obviously, if you got a little bit more, you get a little bit more leeway. It's a little bit more consistent, and you might not need as much of the sort of setup or the tech research, but it's still approximately in that ballpark there. This is also to cast the other ability as well. So the other ability that they've got access to is Nullify. Nullify is a cooldown of 15 seconds, got a range of 9,500, costs 60 antimatter, and it has a removal of the target's antimatter of 50. So basically, you can use a bunch of these guys with Nullify, and it'll just strip all the antimatter out of a capital ship or a support ship or whatever it is they're casting it on. The worst target for this is if you're up against a bunch of Javelises or something like that. If you actually see a whole bunch of those, what is actually best is for you to turn off Nullify and then have them go over there and just use Suppression. Inversely, if you have a bunch of, like, say, corvettes, you turn off Suppression, turn on Nullify, and it'll just disable all the capital ships. There's a bunch of situations where it sort of goes either direction. You can also get screwed over if you're trying to nullify a bunch of acolytes. The big thing about this one is that it's not necessarily going to target the things you want with the abilities you want, and you sort of have to compensate for that. But there's certain things you can do to set up that make it a little bit easier one way or the other. So in any event, though, let's take a look at our hostility research. There's a bunch of ships that we're going to have to talk about here. So first of all, of course, there's the Acolyte. That one is very important for these guys because it lets you sort of actually cast your abilities a little bit more frequently. There is the unique tech for the Domina. That's the ability to unlock that Nullify ability. So that's quite important. I would say that it is the stronger of their 2 abilities just in general, but the suppression can be used to great effect if you know what you're doing with it. Notable is that if you have a whole bunch of acolytes and you have a whole bunch of dominas, and they're sort of working in tandem with one another, they really, really like working in tandem with each other. You have the acolytes go after the corvettes and then the frigates, and they're going to destroy those relatively quickly. Not super quickly, but they can destroy those relatively quickly. This frees up the Dominas, who were probably staggering a whole bunch of like corvettes and frigates because they were around. Once those are all dead, these guys will start destroying the or distracting the tougher ships, making it so that you've got a whole bunch of enemy cruisers locked down. The other thing that's on here that you really want is the Brilliance Array. You do need to be funneling like antimatter into your acolytes using the Brilliance Array to have them keep up with their casting, so that they're capable of constantly supplying that antimatter into the Domina. Because this basically just turns it into 5 times the rate. So you're capable of getting like all of that going all at once there. For other abilities here, you're looking at the shield projection abilities. This thing does, of course, like its shields by quite a bit there. It's got a decent amount base, so you want to have that. But I find that they do pretty well with the shield bonuses, shield burst bonuses, rather. The reason is that if you've got a whole bunch of enemy ships disabled, the Domina tends not to take that much damage from them as a result of that. So they can tend to survive in pretty hostile situations while a whole bunch of the enemies are stunned there. They take a bunch of incidental damage, or the enemy's focus fire is just not as good as it should be, and they're capable of getting shield burst off, which is really, really strong for them, keeping alive in that fight for much longer than they normally would there. They do really, really need the reactor bonuses. Tremendously so, more than like any other ship in the game, because you not only need it for the Domina itself, but you also need it for the Acolytes, because they also have to benefit from that. For other upgrades, the Temple of Renewal is uniquely good for these guys. I find it a little bit difficult to do, personally, but I'm already like not good enough to properly use the Domina like to its fullest potential. Generally, the Temple of Renewal will target them, so it's not like a huge deal. Once you've got the antimatter multicasting, like a single use of this is capable of hitting 6 of your Dominas, so it's capable of helping you lock down a huge number of enemy ships, and each one of those casts is actually like one... I believe it's actually a full 2 suppressions that you're capable of getting off of just that. So it's an extremely, extremely good tool, but having them at the right time in the right place so that you can actually use them with Dominas, not a guaranteed thing. So it's a little bit more tricky than it could otherwise be. Further down, you've got the substance tree here. You've got your hull design bonuses there. This ship does, of course, want to survive a little bit longer, so just having access to that is going to be a nice little thing for it. Definitely shields are going to be the bigger bonus out of the 2 for this particular vessel, though. For Harmony Research, you do have access to Protection and Unity if you're playing as the Advent Reborn, which is going to help them survive quite a bit longer, same as their Shield Burst. It makes it so that while they're sort of flying around enemy capital ships, trying to drain all their antimatter, flying around enemy lighter ships, trying to keep them suppressed, while the enemy fleet is heavily suppressed and they're not really, taking very much focus fire because of the suppression effects, this is going to help keep them alive a little bit more efficiently than they otherwise would be. The Fury the Unity ability for the Advent Wrath, unfortunately, doesn't really help these guys out that much. So the only thing that really does is it makes the Acolytes deal 20% more damage. They're recharging your Dominas a little bit better, but it's not really a huge deal as far as that goes there. So as far as our Unity goes, there's not a whole ton in here for Advent Reborn that I would say really synergizes super well. The thing about the Dominas is that they are a ship that requires another part of your fleet. They can't do the job themselves. They just make what you do have way stronger than they would otherwise be. And as a result, like, you don't usually pick these just for the fact that you've got Dominas. Now, there are some funny things that you can do with these guys. Hypothetically, if you were to get a whole bunch of Dominas, just an absolutely grotesque amount of them, you could actually stun lock a massive number of enemy ships there. You just turn off the Nullify, you just have them go in, you have them sort of like pop a whole bunch of suppressions, and then you recall the ships so that they're sort of pulled out of there, and then you sacrifice, and that'll like blow up everything in the system. So that's something you could do, because that would save you all your Dominas and all your Acolytes, but destroy your entire enemy fleet there. That would potentially be very funny, because it does stop them from leaving, which they might otherwise do, because even if they're just in the phase lane, they can dodge sacrifice that way there. But honestly, I don't think that that's really worth it. Cleanse, I don't think that it works super well with these guys. They're not a great target for it. They're not really a great recipient of it. So I don't think that that has any particular synergy with them. But if you have got to the situation where you've got like a bunch of Iconus Guardians, you've got a bunch of Domina Subjugators, Cleanse can be the icing on that cake there, where it's making it so that you're already really hard to kill fleet, where your opponent doesn't actually deal any damage to you, and where they can't use abilities to deal damage to you. Just gets even more screwed as far as that goes, because now you're using Cleanse to keep everything alive. Could be kind of funny, but not really the sort of thing I go for here. The thing that I think is really good is Resurrection. If you're using quite a lot of these guys in certain situations, especially if you're using it for Nullify, quite a few of them can get destroyed in a fight while that's happening. And being able to bring them all back is really, really strong. So just keeping that sort of in your back pocket to keep those numbers high is quite good there. I did forget to mention, actually, their cost. They're actually not that expensive. A Domina Subjugator costs 8 supply, which is really quite cheap. It costs 400 credits, 135 metal, and 150 crystal. It's quite expensive for crystal, but its metal and credit cost for what it is actually pretty cheap in my opinion. So the number of things that you actually have to keep stun locked with this, it's less than you would sort of expect there. Now, obviously, if you're fighting against 6 acolytes, like your opponent has 6 acolytes and you've got a Domina and you manage to stun 6 acolytes, you're actually kind of like doing okay with that. But to do that, you would also have to have your 4 acolytes and they'd be getting killed while it's happening a little bit. But if you were to sort of have that situation set up there and yours aren't dying for whatever reason, one reason or another, what you've got is a situation where you've got your 20 supply worth of stuff, and your sort of cost of those 4 acolytes plus the cost of the Domina itself, and you're going to find that you're not cost effective there. For the Domina to really shine with Suppression, what you need to do is you need to add that plus all of those acolytes together, and then figure out if whatever it's targeting is valuable enough to really do that with. So if you're up against, say, like Kobolds, and you're capable of stun locking 6 Kobolds perpetually, that's just barely good enough to sort of justify what you're doing here. 6 Disciples would kind of be justifiable, but not really. It's surprising how light of a ship you can kind of get away with suppressing. But obviously, the heavier the ship that you're going after with the Domina Subjugator, the better off you're going to be there. Now, one of the counters to this, and one of the things that doesn't work, is carriers. If you've suppressed a carrier, that doesn't really do much for you. So that's one of the situations where I would say that you kind of want like other solutions rather than the Domina Subjugator. But yeah, it's a very, very powerful effect, and you don't have to like babysit it quite as much as I thought you sort of needed to initially. I've been setting it just on autocast in situations, and even though it's like getting corvettes, it's been getting frigates, it's been still effective. It's still been an okay ability that's been helping me through. Obviously, if I could sort of get it to specifically target Javelises or Harkas, or Otova Suppressors, or what have you, or Penetrators, any of those things, like obviously I'd be getting way better value out of it, but just being able to set them on autocast and knowing that it's still doing something kind of okay, that's actually pretty reasonable for what they're about.
Our challenges.
Now, there are situations though where I just turn off autocast on Suppression and just leave on autocast for Nullify. And vice versa. There are situations where I just want it using Suppression, I don't want it using Nullify. And knowing when to do that is going to come down to like just the situation that you're in, sort of reading the situation. There's lots of times where I just have them both running if I've got enough acolytes. But yeah, generally speaking, that's kind of one of those things that you're just going to have to experiment with when you want one effect or when you want the other one. This is one of the only things that can really counter some of the really intense shenanigans. If you're playing up against somebody who's like absolutely amazing at using the phase out with I can't remember, the Antarac Marauder, then a whole bunch of Dominas can make it really hard to use that Antarac Marauder properly. So these things are a counter to a lot of really, really obnoxious things that this game has to offer, and I think that they're a very important part of what the Advent can do. So anyhow, though, that's going to be our video for today. I hope you found this one enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.